Yes, start now.
Thank you, Rishabh and Ashish. Now I call this meeting to order. Hello, friends. A very good morning to all of you. Very happy to see you again after such a long time. I welcome our guest. I am also happy to have with us today. 1 minute. I am also happy to have few guests from US today, namely Margita Brewer and Delton Ashford. I also welcome the guests from other organizations as well. I hope you all are safe and healthy. The new year, friends, the new year started with rolling out vaccines, and now, yet, here we are again crippled with COVID fear. But amidst this fear and anxiety, I am very happy that our members have came forward, putting service above self into action, and this gives us a hope for a better future. We have started projects like free ambulance service earlier and now restarted it again. This has helped many in this need of our. We have also started projects like promotion of vaccination drive, through which we strive to encourage more persons to get inoculated. We have also we have also started plasma donation drive for those who in need. These projects are results of togetherness and solidarity which we share with each other. Today we are here for gaining insight to tackle COVID-19 and its precautions and preventions which we should take and what best we can do to serve the society. We are very fortunate to have with us today morning two eminent doctors, Dr. Prashant P. Joshi and Dr. Harish Varve, who shall guide us through these COVID times and help us in our missions of COVID-free world. Now I request our Honorable Secretary, Rotarian Naresh Baldova, to take for the further proceedings. Thank you all.
Good morning all. This week we are celebrating birthdays of, today we are celebrating birthday of our member Rotarian Manoj Kakani. On 19th April, Rotarian Tarun Bhatia, Rotarian Varsha Tauri. On 21st April, Rotarian Architect Srirang Gaigore, Rotarian Neha Chandak. On 22nd April, Rotarian Dr. Sham Ladda, Rotarian Harish Rathi. On 24th April, Rotarian Anita Tauri. We wish all of them a very happy birthday. This week we are celebrating anniversaries of, as today we are celebrating anniversary of Rotarian CA Shriyans Geeta Kamdar. 20th April, Rotarian Govind Ritu Agarwal. 22nd April, Rotarian Sandeep Deepa Agarwal. We wish all of them a very happy anniversary. सर, हम लोग आप लोगों को ये बताना चाहेंगे कि हमारे ऑनगोइंग प्रोजेक्ट्स जो चालू है, फ्री एम्बुलेंस सर्विसेज है जो सभी के लिए है इन एंड अराउंड नागपुर, और वैक्सीनेशन ड्राइव चालू है, हमारा प्लाज्मा डोनेशन ड्राइव वो भी चालू है। और एक आप सभी लोगों को रिक्वेस्ट है, इफ यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चंस प्लीज write it in the chat box so it can be asked to our panelist. Now I request Rotarian Dr. Mukesh Chandak to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Naresh Bhaiya. I am audible?
Yeah.
ये जो राहें तबाही की ओर जा रही है, ये जो राहें तबाही की ओर जा रही है, आओ हम इसको फिर से खूबसूरत करें, ये आज की हमारी जरूरत हो रही है। जी हाँ दोस्तों, आज की जरूरत है कि कोई हमें ऐसा साथी मिले, कोई हमें ऐसा मसीहा मिले जो हमें बताए कि हमें कैसे जीना है, कैसे रहना है, क्या खाना है, क्या पीना है, कितना समझना है, कितना भूलना है। रोटरी ईशान्य हमेशा राह दिखाने की ओर अग्रसर रहा है, और उसी कड़ी में हमारे प्रेसिडेंट सर, सेक्रेटरी सर ने एक हीरा चुनकर निकाला है, और यह हीरा काफी तराशा हुआ है। देश की सबसे बड़ी संस्था, मेडिकल संस्था एम्स, AIIMS, जिसको हम AIIMS के नाम से भी जानते हैं, उसमें आप हेड ऑफ डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ मेडिसिन हैं। यवतमाल जैसे साधारण से गांव से आकर आपने नागपुर ही नहीं, हिंदुस्तान ही नहीं, बल्कि देश विदेश में अपना साइंटिफिक रिसर्च, पेपर प्रेजेंटेशन, कॉन्फ्रेंसेस करके अपना परचम, बेस्ट पेपर अवार्ड कई बार लेकर अपना परचम लहराया है। हिंदुस्तान के विभिन्न शहरों के अलावा भी इजिप्ट, थाईलैंड, मलेशिया, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, जिम्बाब्वे, मेक्सिको, चाइना, वियतनाम, ऐसे कई जगह पर आपके पेपर को काफी सराहा गया। मेडिकल फील्ड की हर छोटी सी छोटी और बड़ी से बड़ी उपाधि आपने पाई है, पद का भार आपने संभाला है, जैसा बेसिक स्तर पर हाउस ऑफिसर हो, रजिस्ट्रार हो, लेक्चरर हो, एसोसिएटेड प्रोफेसर हो, हेड ऑफ डिपार्टमेंट हो, या PG गाइड हो, एग्जामिनर हो, हर चीज से आपने अपना पूरा योगदान हमेशा मेडिकल जगत को दिया है। लगभग 33 से ज्यादा PG थीसिस आपके अंडर में चल रहे हैं। लगभग 33 PG स्टूडेंट ने आपको अपना गाइड बनकर नवाजा है, आपको अपना गाइड बनाकर नवाजा है। MD मेडिसिन और DNB के एग्जामिनर के रूप में भी आप चर्चित रहे हैं। नागपुर ब्रांच के डायबिटिक एसोसिएशन ऑफ इंडिया और एकेडमिक ऑफ मेडिकल साइंस के आप अध्यक्ष रह चुके। WHO, वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने कई बार आपको विभिन्न मेडिकल समस्याओं को सुलझाने और समझने हेतु आपको एडवाइजर के रूप से नियुक्त किया है, अपॉइंट किया है। इतना ही नहीं, कई पब्लिकेशन आपके नाम से जाने माने जर्नल्स में छप चुके, जो इंटरनेशनली काफी चर्चित रहे हैं। मैं विशेषता आपके और आपके कलीग द्वारा की गई लैंडमार्क स्टडी, जिसमें लगभग 52 कंट्रीज इन्वॉल्व थी, जिसमें यह पाया गया है कि साउथ एशियन कंट्रीज जैसा इंडिया, पाकिस्तान, नेपाल, बांग्लादेश, इनमें मायोकार्डियल इंफार्क्शन, ये जो बीमारी है, ये यंग लोगों में क्यों ज्यादा पाई गई है, वो आपने बहुत अच्छे से स्टडी कर उसमें ये बताया, उसका आपने कंक्लूजन दिया कि ये कोई एक मतलब हेरिडिटरी नहीं है, ये हमारी रहन सहन का नतीजा है कि हमें बहुत जल्दी यंग एज में कार्डियक अरेस्ट होता है। और WHO ने इसके लिए फंड देकर ये स्टडी कराई थी, जिसमें आप इंडिया का नाम काफी रोशन हुआ। ऐसे कई पब्लिकेशन में आपका अतुलनीय सहयोग है। मेरे पास में लिस्ट है, लगभग कम से कम 175 पब्लिकेशन आपके नाम से यहाँ पे हैं, उनको मैं दोहराना तो नहीं चाहूंगा, बट लगभग 175 पब्लिकेशन हैं। ये लगभग 26 पेज के पब्लिकेशंस मैंने आपके नाम से देखे। आपके बारे में इतनी जानकारी लेते वक्त मुझे ऐसा लग रहा था मानो आपको ऊपर वाले ने 24 घंटे नहीं 48 घंटे दिए। आपके इतने व्यवस्थम शेड्यूल के बावजूद आपने हमारी सेवा भाव को समझकर अपना समय दिया, इसके लिए नागपुर ईशान्य हमेशा आपका एहसानमंद रहेगा। जी हाँ दोस्तों, मैं आमंत्रित कर रहा हूं, लेकिन बिफोर कॉलिंग सर हियर ऑन दिस ऑनलाइन पोडियम, आई इनवाइट ऑल द ऑडियंस, ऑल द व्यूअर्स to keep yourself focused and recharge all the time to embark on this fight with COVID journey to come back to the normal life. So herewith I present Dr. Prashant Joshi sir. Thank you sir. Prashant sir.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आपने जिस तरह से मेरा इंट्रोडक्शन किया है, मैं बहुत आभारी हूँ। और मैं इस काबिल हूँ कि नहीं मुझे मालूम नहीं, बट I think I am very grateful to you for having introduced me in such a nice manner. Thank you very much, sir. I can see very close friends, Dr. Subodh Gupta, in fact my senior, and also the other guest speaker, Dr. Harish Varbe, and my childhood friend, Pramod Acharya, who was my schoolmate in SFS High School. So a lot of friends are here, and I really thank Rotary Club of Nagpur, Ishania, for inviting me, giving this opportunity to speak some words about COVID, and I hope I will be able to answer any questions which are raised by the audience. I would like to start by a brief introduction and it would be better कि अगर जो प्रश्न आते जाएंगे तो उसके बाद उनको उत्तर देने में I think it would be a better forum.
Okay.
मैं थोड़ा सा brief introduction देना चाहता हूँ कि जैसे ये साल this new year in fact heralded with lot of hope that probably 2020 was the worst has gone and vaccine was there. Yeah, which started in from 16th of January to healthcare workers, and everybody hoped that this COVID will now be gone. And this second wave, which has started started somewhere in mid-February, and it is increasing and escalating rapidly, especially in Nagpur. That took us by surprise, and we were, I think, not very well prepared that for this second wave. And this second wave is now causing a lot of problems in the sense that it seems to be more severe. मैं थोड़ा सा अंग्रेजी में बोला तो ठीक है ना कि हिंदी में कि मुकेश जी
हिंदी साथ में इनकॉर्पोरेट कीजिए.
ठीक है. तो ये जो वेव है सेकेंड वेव ये मिड फरवरी में चालू हुई और अभी काफ़ी हद तक फैल चुकी. नागपुर में आप देख रहे होंगे कि जैसे कोविड-19 एक तबाही मचाई हुई है कि बेड्स कम पड़ रहे हैं, पेशेंट्स का द डेथ रेट हैज़ इंक्रीज्ड और बहुत सारी कठिनाइयाँ और एक नेगेटिविटी आ गई है लोगों में और सब निराश हैं कि ये कैसा हो रहा है. इतने सारे डेथ्स हो रही हैं, इतने सारे लोगों को ऑक्सीजन नहीं मिल रहा है, बेड्स नहीं मिल रहे हैं और ये काफ़ी हद तक सब लोग परेशान हैं. इसके दो कारण हो सकते हैं. एक है कि एक म्यूटेशन एक ऐसी चीज़ है वायरस में. दिस वायरस विच ओरिजिनेटेड इन वुहान हैज़ प्रॉबली म्यूटेटेड. दो तरह के म्यूटेशंस सबसे पहले ये जो म्यूटेशंस पाए गए थे ये थे यूके में और अभी इंडियन वेरिएंट भी आ गया है. आपको मालूम होगा, न्यूज़पेपर के द्वारा आपको पता पढ़ा होगा आपने कि म्यूटेशंस आर अ नेचुरल फेनोमेनन ऑफ द वायरस. Virus, when it replicates, when it divides, it mutates, and there have been a lot of mutations. Some mutations are variants of investigation, some are variants of concern. और एक नया म्यूटेंट महाराष्ट्र में पाया गया और नागपुर में से अभी हाल ही में जब जीनोमिक सीक्वेंसिंग किया तो उसमें पाया गया है कि नियरली 50% जो इन्फेक्शंस हो रहे हैं नागपुर में वो म्यूटेंट वायरस के कारण है. और ये म्यूटेंट वायरस के कारण ये जो स्प्रेड हो रहा है ये इसके कारण है. आपको याद होगा जब ये जो पहला वेव हुआ था इन द मंथ ऑफ से जुलाई, अगस्त एंड सितंबर, उस समय आपने देखा होगा कि ये जो लोग उस समय अफेक्टेड थे, शुरुआत में वो सतरंजीपुरा, मोमिनपुरा और ये जो क्राउडेड स्लम एरियाज में लोग रहते थे और जो लोअर सोशियो इकोनॉमिक स्टेटा के लोग थे स्पेशली वो लोग अफेक्ट हुए थे और वहाँ से बहुत सारी केसेस आ रही थी. फिर उसके बाद में अक्टूबर हमने एक सीरो सर्वेलेंस किया कि कितने लोग अफेक्ट हुए, तो उसमें पाया गया कि 62% ऑफ पीपल लिविंग इन सतरंजीपुरा वेर एक्चुअली अफेक्टेड बाय दिस वायरस. अब की ये जो वेव देख रहे हैं ये थोड़ी अलग है. उस फर्स्ट वेव में रूरल एरिया से भी बहुत कम लोग अफेक्ट हुए थे और नाउ व्हाट वी आर सीइंग इन द सेकंड वेव इज दैट पीपल फ्रॉम higher or mid lower economic status are being affected more. जो लोग फर्स्ट वेव में काफ़ी प्रिकॉशंस लिए थे और वो अफेक्ट हुए नहीं थे, ऐसे लोग अफेक्ट हो रहे हैं. और दूसरा है कि ये जो रूरल एरियाज में हैं वहाँ के भी लोग काफ़ी हद तक अफेक्ट हुए. अभी आप देखेंगे दी डेथ्स इन नागपुर 50% आर दोज फ्रॉम कमिंग फ्रॉम रूरल एरिया. सो रूरल एरिया जो फर्स्ट वेव में काफ़ी बची हुई थी वो अभी काफ़ी अफेक्ट हो रही है. और वैसे ही फर्स्ट वेव में हमने देखा था कि यंग लोगों को कुछ बीमारियां होती नहीं थी, वो लोग अफेक्ट नहीं हुए थे. अब नाउ वी आर सीइंग इन दिस सेकंड वेव दैट द यंगर पीपल आर आल्सो गेटिंग अफेक्टेड and they are also getting a severe disease which was not seen in the first wave. So ये जो epidemiological difference है फर्स्ट वेव और सेकंड वेव में, ये एक तो उसके दो कारण हैं. एक तो है कि जो लोग पहले वेव में अफेक्ट हो गए कई हद तक प्रोटेक्टेड है और जो
Dr. Prashant.
और मोर इम्पोर्टेंट इज दैट ये जो वेरिएंट डेवलप हो गया है, एंड दैट इज विच इज मोर इजीली ट्रांसमिसिबल एंड मोर इफेक्टिव.
Dr. Prashant Joshi, I
yes.
have a request.
Yes.
We have quite a few foreign people as well on this board now, just now. I
Okay.
want you to speak in English only so that they can understand. Please.
That should be more comfortable for me.
Yes. Thank you very much.
So what the wave which we are seeing, the second wave which we are witnessing here, especially in Maharashtra, which tops the list of the number of cases of COVID cases, is essentially seen in those people who were spared in the first wave. Here we are seeing that people coming from rural areas which were spared in the first wave are being affected. Similarly, people from the middle and higher socioeconomic strata which were not affected in the first wave are getting affected. In the first wave, we hardly saw young people getting affected. Now we are seeing young people below the age of 30 years, children also getting infected, and some of them developing a very severe disease. So there are basically two important reasons for that. One is that we are now seeing probably a mutant virus, which is more easily transmissible. And this virus is, which is the Indian variant, also known as the double variant. And that is causing a havoc here because it is causing, it is more easily transmissible and more infective than the virus which was seen previously. And second thing is that people has a sense of complacency has set in people. I could see that after the first wave had gone in the months of January and February, and even now people have been, there was COVID appropriate behavior was not being adopted, and people stopped using masks and started, I think, going in crowds and not wearing masks, not sanitizing, not maintaining appropriate social distancing. This appropriate COVID appropriate behavior was not seen. See, in the first wave, what we saw is that there was a lot of panic. We did not know what the virus was about, how will this cause disease. But now what we have seen, the people have realized that in 80% of patients, it causes a mild disease, it's an asymptomatic disease, and it is only about 20% where they develop moderate disease, and only about 5% would actually require critical care. So people are not afraid. No, the panic level has gone down, and the COVID appropriate behavior, which is absolutely essential to break the chain of transmission, has gone down. And so two important reasons for the second wave. One is because of the mutant strain, which is now causing nearly 50% of cases in which is more easily transmissible. And second, because the fear of the COVID has gone down, the COVID appropriate behavior has not been adopted to the level at which it should be. And these are the two main reasons why we are seeing a surge in COVID cases. And with this brief introduction, I think we would like to go ahead with some question and answer session. I think that would be more important rather than me speaking of extempore.
The first, I'll go ahead straight with the questions in that case. The first question is, on the front of prevention in the second wave, how much emphasis would you place on the conventional trio of masking, physical distancing, and hand hygiene?
This is absolutely important. It cannot be overemphasized, and it is the main reason why the surge is. Whether it is a mutant virus or whether it is the usual or the original virus, it makes no difference. The chain of transmission can only be broken by a COVID appropriate behavior. Absolutely important, top priority for this COVID appropriate behavior is important. There is no questions about that. I think everybody should adopt to this COVID appropriate. But if I would like to go ahead and elaborate on this, there are 5 aspects of COVID which I would like to stress. One is testing. Second is contact tracing. Third is appropriate treatment. Fourth is COVID appropriate behavior. And fifth is vaccination. These are 5 points which I would like to elaborate. If time permits, I would like to elaborate, or it could come in the form of questions. What
Yeah,
is
they
being
would-
yeah,
it would come in the form of questions. Yeah.
yes.
What is the role of vaccination as on today? A lot of
Vaccine.
people are afraid of getting vaccinated.
Now, vaccines have been, there are two vaccines which have been approved by government of India. They have been approved as emergency use authorization has been given. And initially this vaccination drive started in healthcare workers. The first day it was formally inaugurated by our Honorable Prime Minister on 16th of January. And when Covishield, which is basically chimpanzee adenovector platform vaccine developed by Oxford and now produced by Serum Institute of India in Pune, that is Covishield. And second vaccine was Covaxin, which was produced by Bharat Biotech and from Hyderabad. And this Covaxin is basically a inactivated virus, whole virus. So the two viruses are structurally are slightly different. One cannot decide which vaccine at this point of time, which vaccine you would develop, which we would get, because each center is allotted either Covaxin or Covishield. Initially, this drive was only, all of you are aware of that it was initially only in healthcare workers, and then 1st of March it got open to people more than 60 years or people with more than 45 years with comorbidity. Why this policy was adopted by the government is that they wanted to rationalize the use of vaccines, and because of it was found that more than 80% of deaths occurred in people more than 50 years of age, and deaths occurred also in those who had comorbidities, and we would capture more than 70% of comorbidities COVID on people more than 50 years, and therefore it seemed rational that people who are elderly with comorbid should be vaccinated first. It is very important to protect our healthcare workers so that healthcare goes on smoothly. और इसलिए गवर्नमेंट ने ऐसा बोला है कि ये जो फेजिंग आउट किया है कि पहले फर्स्ट ओनली हेल्थ केयर वर्कर्स, देन elderly people, and then with comorbidities, these people got vaccine. It's important to understand that both the vaccines are safe. Now we have experience. Now we have seen so many people, nearly more than 1 crore people who have been vaccinated. Side effects have been absolutely minimal. Though theoretically, the Covishield, especially the Oxford vaccine, has been shown to cause thrombotic events, which are extremely rare. They have been reported from Western countries, but now in our setups and in India, at least these side effects are so negligible, and that I think one should not worry about the side effects, get themselves vaccinated. Regarding the protective effect of vaccines, I would like to stress again that Covishield has about 70% efficacy. But the efficacy is not based on that. It is important to really realize that people who take vaccinations are not fully protected from developing the infection, though they are protected definitely against development of severe infection. They have been shown protection against hospitalization, protection against death, but mild infections could still occur in patients who have been vaccinated, and these mild infections would be responsible for spread of the vaccine, spread of the disease, and therefore it is also very important that people who are vaccinated also take proper COVID appropriate precautions which are needed to prevent the spread of. See, the sense of complacency develops. I've seen people who have been vaccinated. They think that they are protected from developing the disease, and they don't wear masks. They go into crowded places. They do not take the precautions which are expected from them, and therefore, if they develop mild asymptomatic disease, which is seen in nearly 80% of COVID cases, they can still be infective and they can still spread the infection, and therefore it is very important vaccination and this COVID appropriate behavior both would be important in stopping this pandemic in the second wave.
That was wonderful. For prevention, do you recommend any pills like vitamins, minerals, zinc, anything?
Now, see what has been said is that if in a patient who is asymptomatic with just and mild infections, the only treatment which has been advocated by a majority of the guidelines is that you give vitamin C, you can give zinc, you can give vitamin D. Now these are not. It's not that these are miracle drugs. These are drugs which can improve the immunity. But the problem is that immunity does not develop in days. It develops. It takes time. And immunity basically develops in persons who are eating a healthy diet, who are exercising, have a healthy mind, and it develops over a period of years. So just by taking these pills, one cannot say that, and there have been no studies as such. Though there have been studies which have shown that people who had low vitamin D levels, they develop more severe disease, COVID disease. But these are all observational studies, no randomized control trials, which are the basically the studies on the basis of which clinicians adopt those practices. But vitamin D and these things may help, but definitely they are more of a placebo. They have a more of a placebo effect, and
Yeah,
therefore, even in prevention, I think there is no drug which can actually prevent. The only thing which can prevent is COVID appropriate behavior and vaccination.
your view on Jalniti and Kadas.
Yeah, the same question which it relates to this vitamins, it relates to these kadas and other things which are again good. There is no harm in taking them. Actually, absolutely. But if you want to say that they are useful in preventing the disease or if they are improving the outcomes, there are no studies for that. Similarly, taking steam inhalations. Now, people as soon as they get RT-PCR positive, they do steam inhalations 4 times a day. No harm in doing it, no harm in taking kadas, but whether they work or they not work is still a big question mark. The question is, when you take this steam inhalations 4 times a day, the virus has already gone inside your body, and this steam inhalation would be an eye wash for you, and it will not help in decreasing the viral clearance from there. So these are not harmful. I would not say don't do them, you don't take them. I would say continue to take them, but whether they help or whether they do not help is something which is questionable.
Yeah, any change in presentation and total outcome in the second wave compared to the first wave in COVID?
This is a question which a lot of people are answering, but I would still say that the data is still not there. These are personal experiences, and we generally it was found that it is more. What we are finding now is that because the disease is more easily transmissible, what is happening is that we are finding the whole family is getting affected. I've seen many families where 3 generations live, all them, right from children to parents to grandparents, all of them getting infected. So infectivity is very high. Sometimes it has been observed that it starts with a mild disease, like mild sore throat or mild running of nose. And by the time, without any fever, and therefore when the person actually develops fever and gets symptom tested, it is already 3 to 4 days have already gone. And by the time the virus may have already gone down into the respiratory tract and may have caused pneumonia. So that these are, and lung involvement is early, that is what some people are saying, but there is no documented literature or a good study to say that there is a difference in the clinical presentation of the seen in first wave as compared to the second wave. These are all personal experiences which all of us are seeing.
So indirectly, you suggest that people should report early to their doctors.
Yes, one important point from the public health educational point is that I would suggest that you should get yourself tested at the earliest. As soon as symptoms, what is happening presently, and it's not, I would not blame anybody for that, is that for first few days, since the fever comes only say about for half an hour in 124 hours as mild sore throat, people think that this is not COVID. They take about 3 to 4 days, continue to work, continue to spread that virus. Then they show to their physician. The physician again says that you don't have anything. You are not afebrile at this point of time. So you have a just mild throat. So you take some drugs which he prescribes for like antibiotics or something. and then again 3 to 4 days goes, and the patient continues to be mobile, moves about in society, continues to get infected, and after about 5 or 6 days, he gets himself tested. When he starts developing actually high-grade fever, and by the time he gets tested, he has infected a lot of people. So what I was saying very importantly, right on the first statement, that early testing and contact tracing, that is people who have been come in contact with the patient, isolate the patient immediately as soon as any symptoms of this sort develop, get yourself tested at the earliest possible, isolate yourself even before testing, and also from those who have been coming in contact, they also should be tested at the 5th day of contact. And testing, contact tracing, and then early treatment are the 3 cornerstones in the treatment. And one of the reasons why this pandemic is spreading is because people are not getting tested or testing late, and they are not isolating themselves, which is very important in order to prevent the spread of this virus.
In this phase of community transmission, even now contact tracing and triaging is important.
Yes, it's very important, still important, because we do not know. As soon as a person gets infected or gets symptoms, the person should isolate himself. And that is absolutely important, and especially high-risk contacts. I'm talking of high-risk contacts. High-risk contacts are for people who are in contact with the person who are living with the person in the same household, and those who have come in contact with the person without mask at a distance of 1 meter for at least 15 minutes. These are high-risk contacts, and there are low-risk contacts as well. These high-risk contacts are also very high risk of developing the infection, and therefore they also needs to be isolated, quarantined for at least 5 days. And on the 5th day of the quarantine, they should get themselves tested as well.
Any role of rapid antigen tests and gene experts at this stage?
Yeah, the rapid antigen test is very important, but it has its own limitations. Now, what is happening is that because in this pandemic there are so many cases, the RT-PCR labs are overworked, and there is a lot of delay in getting the reports. Sometimes delays to the tune of 48 hours or even more. And now in this situation, if a person is symptomatic, a rapid antigen test would get the result within 30 minutes. And you'll immediately, and if it is positive, it is positive. That means you need not do the RT-PCR. It is considered positive and the patient is treated as such. But it is also important, it has a sensitivity of only 40%, which means that even if a person is symptomatic and it turns out to be negative, it means that RT-PCR should be repeated. And we have seen a lot of cases where the rapid antigen test is negative and the person's RT-PCR turns out to be positive. Actually, the rapid antigen test was actually initiated, and initially recommendations were that they should be done for surveillance purposes in a hotspot or in a containment zone. So all patients who are in the area where there is a density of these cases, all other who are not who are in contact, they should be immediately done. Immediately, a rapid antigen test should be done so that the results are available immediately with us.
Is there a proven and exact remedy for COVID, the disease?
That's again a very important question. Now, we know the first cases were reported in India probably in the month of March and February end. And we know the first cases started in Wuhan somewhere in November and last in 2019. But till date, our scientific world has not found actually a good antiviral drug which can cure the disease, or which is found to be has mortality benefits, that giving this antiviral drug would prevent deaths. Now, this is this does not mean that research is not going on. Research is still going on. A lot of drugs are tried, but again, I would like to stress that amongst the antiviral drugs we have favipiravir, which has been recommended by government of Maharashtra based on a trial of only 150 patients, which showed that it increases the viral clearance, but no clinically meaningful outcomes were studied. Very flimsy data, evidence is very poor. But because if there is no other antiviral drug, in mild cases, favipiravir has been recommended by the task force in the government of Maharashtra guidelines, but not by ICMR guidelines. You will not find mention of favipiravir in ICMR or AIMS guidelines, but they have been mentioned in government of Maharashtra task force guidelines. Second is ivermectin, which has not been mentioned in government of Maharashtra guidelines, but it has now come in the recent 7th April guidelines issued by AIMS Delhi and the ICMR guidelines. Again, data is very sketchy. There have been about 22 studies involving more than 10,000 patients, which have clearly shown that there is no benefit of, in fact, ivermectin also. In vitro studies have shown that ivermectin works. So if you are, and then remdesivir. Now that is a very important drug, a drug which needs to be discussed and told here is remdesivir. Now remdesivir, there have been number of studies, and I would like to quote 4 studies which in meta-analysis which clearly showed that it does not reduce mortality. It does not save lives. There have been the solidarity trial of WHO, which actually showed that it is not useful in anything. It does not useful in reducing ventilator need or reducing death. Similarly, other studies, recovery study, the trial study of UK, did not show that it improves mortality, and only studies showed that it improves, it shortens the survival period by about shortens the hospitalization period by about 3 days. That is the only evidence. But all guidelines recommend remdesivir in patients who have moderate disease, those who are desaturating. That means whose SpO2 levels are less than 94% and who have moderate disease. So there are very specific, clear guidelines in the use of remdesivir, and they should be adhered, and it should not be discriminately used.
I want you to sound the entire society on this chaos on remdesivir, causing artificial shortage and many of people after remdesivir.
See, what happened, the reason why people were starting using remdesivir is very simple. There is no antiviral drug. And of all the antiviral drugs, only remdesivir was found to be slightly useful in shortening the survival period. What happens in COVID-19 is that in the first week, viral replication occurs. And it is in this period that antiviral drugs would work. In the second week, it is the immune response of the body which is important. And what is this immune response is that it increases the CRP levels, and it increases the interleukin-6 ferritin levels, which are inflammatory markers. So it's a pro-inflammatory markers, and it causes what is known as cytokine release syndrome, which is basically an immune response of the body. Virus is not there, body's immune response which is there, and which is many times fatal, and that causes problems. And therefore, if you want to use a drug, you should use it in the antiviral drug. It will be best useful in the first week. Of all the antiviral drugs, only remdesivir. So people thought that it is better to use remdesivir in the first week because we really do not know which patients would actually progress. But if you look at evidence, it does not, there is no evidence that it would actually save lives. That is very important to understand. And therefore, this drug came in all the guidelines, and people started using it. Patients knew that about this drug and started demanding this remdesivir. It's a fairly, what do you say? It is a safe drug. It is not so harmful. So people started using remdesivir for this. But then people should be educated to know that there should be no mad rush to take remdesivir, because it has not been shown to save lives in number of clinical trials which have been conducted.
Would you like to emphasize on any particular drug to be used during this first week of COVID?
No, I don't think in the first week of drug, there is any drug which has been shown to improve survival or to improve to prevent the disease progress. Yes, it is the steroids which have been shown to improve survival. People have used other drug medicines, but no medicines, including plasma therapy. There is absolutely no evidence that it saves lives or that it is useful.
Now that we are in the midst of vaccination and we are getting COVID among vaccinated patients as well, coming back to your answer, the immune response in the second week, is that exaggerated in vaccinated patients or dampened down?
No, vaccination has no effect on the immune response. And if at all, it would have a beneficial effect. And it is not that people who are vaccinated develop more disease or more severe disease. No, vaccination, in fact, has been known to prevent severe disease, has been shown to prevent hospitalization, has been shown to prevent deaths. Though it may still be responsible for causing mild infections, but definitely the immune response is not exaggerated, definitely not in patients who have COVID. One important point I would like to stress about the immune response, and there have been three drugs which are very important in the treatment of COVID, though not in the first week. One is steroids, use of steroids. Now, what is steroids which are used, like methylprednisone or dexamethasone? Now, these are basically anti-inflammatory drugs. Now, these drugs, we know COVID has a pro-inflammatory state and it's a pro-thrombotic state. Inflammation, immune response of the body, which is produces a lot of immune substances like cytokines, which are released in the body, which are harmful, are reduced by giving steroids. Now, it's very important that steroids in the recovery trial is the first drug in COVID which has been shown to improve survival. But there are very specific indications of steroids. A steroid should not be used in the first week when the virus is replicating, which means that in that situation, if you use steroids, the virus replication would increase because it's an immunosuppressant. What steroid should be, there are very specific indications of steroid. In the recovery trial, they have used steroids in a dose of dexamethasone IV 6 milligrams for 10 days. And in patients who are desaturating, it was found that desaturating means whose SpO2 levels are less than say 94%. In these patients, which was found that that steroids improve survival and saves lives. But if you use steroids in patients whose oxygen levels are normal, it would have more adverse outcomes, which means that it should not be used. And I have seen many people using it. And therefore, I would like to again stress that once your COVID is diagnosed and the patient is maintaining adequate saturation, the steroids should not be used. If steroids are used in that situation, viral replication would increase and it would cause more adverse outcomes as compared to not giving steroids. And there is very strong recommendations now coming up in all the guidelines that steroids should not be used with the SpO2 levels are normal, people who are not hypoxic and who do not require supplemental oxygenation. Patients should not use steroids.
Your brief comments on
And
the
another
CT
drug-
value.
Subodh sir, we have Pramod Bhaiya. He is having some questions, so he is asking it. So can we
please.
just unmute Pramod?
Oh yes, oh yes.
Pramod Bhaiya, I believe you have something to say,
Yeah.
right?
Dr. Saab, Dr. Subodh,
Go ahead. Yeah.
let us keep other questions of Dr. Joshi in the last session. Let us start with Dr. Harish Varbe now, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Because Dr. Joshi का बाद में आखिरी में पूछेंगे, अभी वर्बे साहब का भी प्रेजेंटेशन जो है वो करके फिर बाद दोनों से क्वेश्चन पूछेंगे सर, ठीक रहेगा?
Bilkul, I appreciate this point.
Thank you, sir.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Prashant,
Thank you,
I
Dr.
request
Joshi.
you to stay on with us.
Yes, absolutely. I was.
Yeah.
Okay, please carry on. Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this. I am here available if there are questions at the end.
Yeah,
You, Ms. Dr. Hari.
There are quite a few. There are quite a few for you.
Yes. I'll be here.
Okay, thank you so much, Prashant.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Over to Mr. Ram to take the proceedings further from here.
Yeah, I am audible. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, who is going to talk to us about plasma donation, which is need of this time. Dr. Harish Varbe, sir. He is medical director at Lifeline Blood Bank, which is India's first and only RBD plasma bank in Central India. It is the largest and most high-tech blood bank of Central India. Sir was president at Academy of Medical Sciences, Nagpur in the year 2018-19. He is vice president at Indian Society of Blood Transfusion Maharashtra chapter. He is national assessor at NABH Quality Council of India. He is an expert committee member of State Blood Transfusion Council, Government of Maharashtra. He is an expert committee member of Asian Association of Transfusion Medicine. Sir, under his leadership, conducted India's largest plasma donation camp at Collector Office, Bhandara, and donated 132 RBD plasma free of cost for COVID patients in Government Hospital, Bhandara. He provided free blood supply to 131 children suffering from sickle and thalassemia, which is maximum in central India. Lifeline Blood Bank has given free blood during various national disasters. He got COVID Yodha Puraskar by Honorable Nitinji Gadkari, Union Minister, Government of India in January 2021. He got Corona Warrior Award at National Conference of ISBTI at Chennai in February 2021. So please welcome Dr. Harish Varve, sir, with huge round of applause. Sir, please.
Dr. Varve,
am I
I
audible?
invite you for a brief presentation, introductory presentation, so that later on we can go ahead with the question answer series.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Right, sir. Okay. Thank you for the kind words during my introduction. I must thank the Rotary Club of Nagpur, Ishanya, for taking up this very important topic of plasma donation and plasma therapy during this second wave, which is very dangerous and taking many lives on daily basis. We need to learn to live with corona for a long time. Continuously, we are learning for the multiple research studies, and the knowledge is continuously evolving, and there is continuous revision of guidelines and protocols for better management of COVID. And what are the managements? As Dr. Joshi sir, he's my teacher also during my undergraduate. He taught me, as he has told us, there is no specific FDA approved drug or therapy till date. Whatever is being used, whatever drugs are used or therapies are used, they are on experimental basis, on emergency use authorization basis. The main treatment remains still the oxygen, and supportive therapy. Recently, Placid and Platina trials results were published, and the studies were terminated because it didn't show any results benefit to the patient, and the media added lot of confusion. But let me tell you, all this turmoil is related to old traditional blind plasma therapy without checking right antibody, its level, right dose and timing. With better understanding of science, plasma therapy is now better standardized, and the new guidelines and recommendation has come from ICMR, COVID Task Force, AIMS Delhi, AABB, USA, European Union and all. And recently, RBD plasma has saved the life of my wife without any antiviral drugs or steroid, remdesivir, or whatever. The purpose of this, my presentation, is to clear the confusion whether it is banned or not, whether it is effective or not, whether it is risky or not. Update on the rational use of plasma with right antibody dose and timing, and to save the lives of many COVID patients during this second wave and in coming future. What is the rational basic of like convalescent plasma therapy? After coronavirus infection, our immune system produces multiple antibodies to kill the virus, and after that patient recovers. But these antibodies remain in our blood for months together. And if the plasma of such COVID recovered person is taken and given to the new COVID patients, these ready-made antibodies kill or clear the virus immediately and help the patient to recover faster. And it is not a new therapy. It has been used more than 100 years in various diseases, and we are now using in SARS-CoV-2 infection in COVID. And the meta-analysis in various diseases used earlier has shown that there is a significant benefit if it is given in early phase, improves the mortality, improves the clinical symptoms, and lowers down the viral load. Let us see how the disease happens. The first thing is virus binds to the cell receptors. After that, virus enters inside the cell, multiplies, destroy the cell, again come out and again infect the other cells. This is how it damages the cells, tissue and the organ, and creating the various symptoms. Then our immune system produces cell mediated or antibody mediated immune response. There is inflammatory hyper response, and the complications. And these receptors, these are called as AC2 receptors, are maximum on lung. That's why the maximum symptoms are on lung, but there are other organs also who are having the AC2 receptors. The virus is spherical, we all know, and has a multiple spikes. This is the virus, and these are the nucleocapsids here. And these are the membrane and envelope, and these are the multiple spikes. And our immune system produces antibodies against nucleocapsid here, then the spike 1, spike 2, and the terminal part of the spike, that is called as receptor binding domain. Domain means area. Why it is called as receptor binding domain? Because it binds to the receptors on the human cell, and it then enters this human cell. But then out of multiple antibodies, nucleocapsid antibody is formed in abundance, because that is the most abundant antigen, and it comes early, it goes early, but it is not a protective antibody. It is just the binding antibody. It is a scrap antibody as far as the protection is concerned. And majority of the kits available in the market, they do test this nucleocapsid IgG antibody, which has created a lot of media turmoil in the USA. The most important antibody for the immunotherapy is the receptor binding domain antibody. Let us see what is that. It attaches to the terminal part of the spike of the virus and keeps the virus away from the human cell and doesn't allow it to enter inside and do further damage to the cell. This is the RBD antibody. It attaches to this and it doesn't allow to virus to enter inside. And the multiple studies has shown that the RBD antibody is the protective antibody. And this chart in the one study, it is showing the ability of the virus. RBD antibody is the most neutralizing antibody, then spike, and the nucleocapsid is of no use as far as the neutralization is concerned. And these are the various studies. Let us see how this happens actually. This is the virus, and these are the spikes, and it attached to the AC2 receptors of the human cells. These are the receptors, and then virus enters inside the cell. But once our immune system develops this antibody and attached to this terminal part of the spike, that is RBD antibody bind to the terminal part of the spike, then virus cannot enter bind to the receptors and enter inside the cells, and virus cannot remain alive outside the cell for a long time, and it gets cleared by our immune system cells. This is how the RBD antibody works. But there is a lot of confusion as far as the antibody testing is concerned. Many of my friends and doctors ask me, I have done the IgG antibody test, and is that right? But against which antigen? That is most important. IgG or IgM is not, it is also important, but more precise is against which antigen is more important. The basic foundation of plasma therapy is the high titer protective neutralizing antibodies in the donor plasma, and the right antibody testing facility is must for effective plasma therapy. And these are the various methods: viral neutralization test, and these are they are risky. They deal with the live virus and all, and takes time. So it is not practically possible to use for the plasma therapy. The best is surrogate viral neutralization test, which is using the synthetic receptors and the antigen, and this is done at Lifeline. And the RBD antibody, which is a neutralizing antibody, is done by the chemiluminescence method. These are the two methods we are following at Lifeline Blood Bank. The best is RBD, second followed by the S1, then spike antibody, and the nucleocapsid antibody carries no meaning. It just tells us the exposure, but nothing tells about the protection. COVID management, we all know: oxygen, 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 and supportive therapy. Then comes the passive immunotherapy. Immunotherapy, convalescent plasma is number one, followed by hyperimmunoglobulin, and the monoclonal antibody is the very costly proposal. And US FDA has recently given approval to all these monoclonal antibodies. The drugs, all these are antiviral drugs, remdesivir, flavi, ivermectin, immunomodulatory drugs like steroid, toci, and the anticoagulant. These are actually working. But as of date, this is a new virus. There is no FDA approved drug, and we are using all emergency use experimental drugs and therapies. Plasma therapy, it has an antiviral effect, anti-inflammatory effect, and other. It is the natural way of viral clearance, but in a passive way. It is highly specific antiviral therapy. It is highly effective. It gives immediate protection, and it is a strong therapy and bring down the viral to load to zero within 24 hours. American Society of Microbiology has shown that the transfusion of adequate dose of plasma with high antibody titer can bring down the viral load to zero within 24 hours. What our national guidelines says, if you want to give the plasma, you have to check the RPD antibody and its high titer 640 or more. And what the international guidelines says, US FDA says the titer should be more than 160, or now if it is not available, then mid titer plasma of 180 can also be used, but this is also banned from the March 21st by US FDA. So they have to use only high titer plasma. In India, 1 in 80 titer, which is a mid titer, is allowed by the ICMR. And again, people are not even testing the neutralizing antibodies or RBD antibodies. They are doing the nucleocapsid antibodies, which is not scientific, not rational. If you want the tea to be sweet, you just cannot put a 2 grains of the sugar, but an entire teaspoon of the sugar. And like salt also, we cannot put just low because it is looking white. For effective plasma therapy, you have to have the right antibody, that is right RBD antibody, and that too in high titer. And clear guidelines, despite the clear guidelines, there was no kit in the world. That's why we were using the old traditional blind plasma therapy. And this is the main reason for the variable results seen in our previous studies. And the whole world was waiting for the RBD kit for the effective convalescent plasma therapy. US FDA approved a world's first RBD kit on the 31st July. It came in US market on the first week of August, and second week of August, we called it at in India at Lifeline and started the India's first RBD plasma bank. RBD plasma bank. So this is the machine where on which we do test the RBD antibody, and this is how we take the plasma on this machine. This is the world's fastest plasma apheresis machine to withdraws the plasma within 30 minutes. And the rationale of CCP is it should be the right plasma donor should be there with right antibody and right titer, and the right patient criteria is also must. The right disease severity, disease phase, early viremic phase, and right therapeutic dose, volume, and schedule. Donor criteria. What are donor criteria? Age should be 18 to 65, weight should be 50 kg and more, and there should be no history of blood transfusion or the history of childbirth or abortion, because this can lead to additional lung injury in patients. And after the COVID illness, there should be a 14 days period of asymptomatic period, and the antibody in the donor should be high, and then only one can donate plasma. In India, we are allowed to collect around 400 to 500 ml of plasma, and every 14 days you can keep donating. In US and developed countries, they are collecting 750 ml of plasma every 7 days, up to 12 times, till the antibody level is high. And this is how we collect the plasma. What are the patient criteria? The US FDA says it can be used in the severe diseases and life-threatening cases. What are the severe cases? One are the more of the following, like respiratory rate should be more than 30, saturation should be less than 93, or PF ratio should be less than 300, or lung infiltrate should be there. Life-threatening is respiratory failure, organ failure, and septic shock. The task force gives the recommendation on 23rd, as the fever, cough, and breathlessness with the one of the following find in moderate or severe cases: respiratory rate 30, saturation less than 94, or peer pressure 300.
Dr. Varve sahab, I have to request you,
Sir.
if we make it more scientific,
Yes,
people
sir.
would lose interest.
Okay, sir.
I think we can go ahead with question answers from here on. Please,
Correct.
in next 5 minutes, sum it up completely.
Yes, sir.
Please.
We are last few slides only.
Thank you.
Right, sir. It should be given in early phase, early viremic phase, first week, the right time. If we give the steroid in the early viremic phase, it will give the cause the damage to the patient, not the benefit. The antiviral drugs should be given the viremic phase. Anti-inflammatory drugs should be given the inflammatory phase. The best time to give the plasma is from the first day of hospitalization, first 44 hours. This is as per the and should be used as the first line of therapy as given by the Indian Society of Transfusion Medicine, International Society of Transfusion Medicine. First 2 days, maybe up to 7 days. If we the severity is not important, it can be given in moderate, severe, life-threatening, but early days is more important after hospitalization. If we take it from the day 1 of symptom up to 7 days is the ideal time. Beyond 7 days, if you want to give, first check the antibody in the patient, and if it is negative, then you can give plasma. Right therapeutic dose is also important. Unlike pharma products, it is not a standard product where it contains so much of antibody. So these are the various countries giving the various guidelines. US, it is 500 ml of plasma is to be given in a stat dose. And the dose also depends on body weight of the patient, whether the patient is immunosuppressed or immunocompromised, or sicker patient have the higher viral load and need more bags of plasma. And the titer, antibody titer in the plasma is also important. High titer plasma, 500 ml is the ideal recommendation. If it is low titer, you have to give more. For the safety margin, it is better to give the higher plasma. And 500 ml dose is ideal of high titer. In India, we are supposed to produce only 200 ml bags. So 2 bags stat and to be repeated every 12 hours.
As just asked, plasma therapy.
I will just skip that.
Where does it stand?
The older guidelines, the main reason for why our older studies failed is the older guideline was not right, rational as per the today's evidence base. It was saying it is to be given in the moderate cases, not improving to steroid. And it only 1 bag to be given stat and second bag after 24 hours. If there is a fire which can be extinguished by 2 buckets, give 1 bucket today, and after 24 hours, second bucket is not the right way of doing the right work. The placid therapy, why it failed mainly because it was antibodies were not checked, and when we retrospectively when it was checked, 36% patient had no bags had no antibodies. 70% received only one bag of plasma, and low titer plasma was given, and 83% of the patients were having the already antibody in their blood. It was given late. So that is the main reason why this Indian, now the ICMR has given the rational guidelines to be used rationally as per the evidence base, and it says it can reduce the severity, duration, and mortality provided there is a specific antibody at high titer, and should be given in the first week or maybe up to 10 days. And this is the AIIMS guideline, ABB guideline. Then US FDA has now halted the production of the mid titer plasma, and these are various studies showing the high benefit of plasma in the COVID patients.
That was a very lucid presentation.
Right, sir. These are the
shall we now go ahead with question answer so that people will get
we can go.
You have answered 90% of my questions,
right, sir,
during your talk, so I'll skip all that. Just in any given patient who is absolutely eligible to receive this, how many units are required to cure that patient?
See, unlike any drug or injection, Remdesivir, suppose we want to give, we have to initially give the loading dose of 200 ml and two vials, and then subsequently one vial. So here in like case of plasma, there is no fixed amount of antibody, and there are so many variables as far as donor is concerned or as far as the patient is also concerned. So it is as a safety margin, more the better, earlier the better. So I would recommend to give the American guidelines say 500 stat with high titer. Since in India it is mid titer is allowed, so 2 bag stat and to be repeated every 12 hours as per the blood volume, body weight, and the other patient criteria. And the
Cost of therapy in a moderately sick patient.
Moderate, sick, life-threatening cases, the severity is not important. Early
Number of days,
diabetic
early
pain
3
is
days,
important.
early 3 days.
Early 7 days, maybe up to 10 days in sicker patient, immunocompromised patient, where the viremia is little prolonged.
So how many doses are required and what is the cost, total cost?
Cost of RBD plasma is 10,000 rupees.
Yeah.
And as I told you, depends on 1 unit for 15 kgs body weight is what is recommended. 1 bag per 15 kgs body weight, 13 ml per kg body weight.
How do you select the donors? As you rightly pointed out, it is based on titers and you have to get the high titers. I totally agree. Now with a vaccination coming in.
Correct.
Vaccination has a slightly boosting effect on the antibodies.
Correct.
So does it interfere with your selection?
No, sir. Rather, those who are basically, we just cannot take the plasma from who are just only vaccinated. By definition, the plasma should be taken from the COVID recovered person.
Yeah, that's
but right. When the such person, even they receive the vaccination, their antibody titer goes up, and it is better, gives a better titer of antibody. And after 14 days of like vaccination, the person is eligible to accept the this thing, plasma.
Yeah. Once the convalescent plasma,
sir,
of development of innate immunity in a person is disturbed, right? Changed. So does it have any long-term derangement in the induction of natural COVID-19 immunity in the recipients of convalescent plasma?
When we are giving the plasma in the patient who is sick, moderate to severe, basic purpose is to save the life, not whether he will be developed.
Yes.
That is a later phase. But then
no. As a scientist, I want a remark from you.
That is I'm trying to tell you. But giving the plasma, it will definitely lessen the antigenic stimulus to the patient, and might be patients, their own antibody might develop less, but then they can very well be stimulated by giving the vaccines later.
So as a corollary to this question,
sir,
did you have any of your convalescent plasma recipient patient as a donor for the convalescent plasma therapy?
No, anyone who receives blood or blood product is not fit to donate blood for 1 year.
Okay, so that's absolved as such of this responsibility.
Right, sir.
And now the trickiest question that I want to know really from you.
Sir.
Why are WHO, FDA, ICMR not openly supporting convalescent plasma therapy as the primary modality?
Right, sir. ICMR conducted the trial that was as per the pragmatic, study. As per the current available scope or the kind of facilities available during that time, evidence-based available at the start of the study. But with the evidence-based, now the ICMR has come up with the guidelines which says indiscriminate use of plasma should be avoided, but rational use of plasma is advisable in early phase with right antibody at right titer. So many international authorities like American authorities or European authorities, they have come up with the guidelines and recommendations to use the plasma in a rational way. And this has shown my personal experience when my wife was sick on day 1. She was PCR positive, having had a mild fever. initially I treated her for 6 days with the crocin and vitamins and symptomatic treatment. On day 7, she deteriorated. Her fever range increased. When I repeated CT, it was score was showing 10 out of 25. She had copious involuntary motions 5 per day in a day. She literally collapsed in the evening. I admitted my wife in one of my friend's hospital and requested them to give the high titer plasma. On evening 7th day, I gave her the one plasma. 2nd day, I gave the second plasma. 3rd day, patient was back home. Sir.
Doctor sir, please unmute. Doctor sir.
Sorry. Modern medicine is evidence-based, Dr. Verbe.
Right, sir.
Yeah. How much is the evidence for what we are talking about, convalescent plasma?
There are n number of studies.
No. Concrete evidence.
Yeah, of course. That is what I'm talking of. There are multiple RCTs, observation studies about the drugs also, about the plasma therapy also. And there are contrary results to, even for the WHO's largest trial. It has shown the zero effect of remdesivir or Flavi. There are multiple, even the plasma trial results also, which has shown the zero results of the plasma. And there are good trials which has used the plasma with the right antibody and right titer, right timing in right patient, has shown the excellent results. So if you see the many trials and all, if there is a right antibody checking at right titer checking, there are good results. And I can show you the list of the kind of studies which has
you wait for the randomized study to convince us in the best possible way.
Yes,
but I must applaud the scientists within you that you are sticking to this to bring
Yes,
out around something which is right now not finding a lot of evidence. I must commend that thing. May I ask a few questions to Dr. Joshi?
Sir, may I make a few comment? One small comment I want to make, sir. Is it okay?
Please go ahead.
See, there are 2 or 3 things which have been shown to improve survival in COVID. One, of course, is oxygen is very important. Second is steroids. If used when the person is desaturating, it has definitely shown to improve survival because it helps to counter the cytokine storm. And because COVID is a pro-inflammatory state, and steroids definitely save life in patients when used in appropriate timing. That means when the patients are desaturating in the second week. Third drug which has been shown to be improve survival is anticoagulants. Now, anticoagulants are always useful because it's a pro-thrombotic state. We see patients of COVID developing thrombotic events. They develop young heart attacks, young strokes, paralytic strokes have been reported in patients of stroke because it's a pro-thrombotic state. And for that, anticoagulants like enoxaparin, low molecular weight heparin, has been shown to improve, to be useful. So these are 3 drugs which have definitely scientific evidence to prove and should definitely be used in all patients.
That was very insightful kicking in. Very nice information. Now your brief comment on CT value and HRCT. Hello. Am I audible? Dr. Joshi?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Please.
Your brief comment on CT value in the RT-PCR reports and HRCT percent in many of people for HRCT.
Yes, that's a very, very important question which the general public usually get confused. With the CT value, C is capital, T is small in RT-PCR. My personal view is that this value should not be reported in the RT-PCR report itself. Because what is happening is people, when they tell me that they are positive, they tell me the CT score. And they tell me the CT score is 21 and therefore they will have a more severe disease. See, the cutoff value which ICMR has advocated letter is an official letter from ICMR that CT value in that is called cycle threshold value in RT-PCR should be less than 35 to label the person as positive. If it is more than 35, it is labeled as negative. Now that is one thing, but what is important is that people lower the CT value, higher the infectivity of the patient is, and but it does not correlate with severity of the disease. It does not mean that patients who have a lower CT value will have more severe clinical disease, but it does mean that there is a higher viral load, and therefore patients may have more infective and they may spread the infection more commonly. So it is lower CT value is more important for transmission and infectivity rather than to determine the severity of the disease. The CT chest, that is computed tomography chest, which is done in patients who have COVID. Now, it should, my two comments on that is, first is that they should not be done on the first day, because in first day it is usually the virus is in the upper respiratory tract, and you will get a very normal HRCT report. Whereas if you do it after third or fourth day, and if the inflammatory markers are rising, by the time the pneumonia sets in, because pneumonia does not set in on the first day, and at that time it is useful, because HRCT is expensive. It causes a lot of exposure to radiation, and therefore one should not use it at a time when you expect a normal value, and therefore we should be reserved for when the patient develops symptoms which are more severe, or patients develop after 4 to 5 days when the pneumonia sets in actually. So these are important points. I have seen people start doing CT scan on day one when they have only a upper respiratory tract infections, and they're happy that the CT score is 0. But that carries no meaning, because on the 4th and 5th day they develop pneumonia, and the CT score on the CT scan would increase. If the CT score is less than 8 out of 25, it is called mild pneumonia. If it is between 8 to 17, it is called moderate. If it is more than that, it is called severe pneumonia. Obviously, patients with severe pneumonia have worse outcomes, and they would usually develop a more severe disease.
Are there any circumstances when HRCT becomes the diagnostic thing, RT-PCR reporting negative?
That's a very important question. In fact, we see many patients where the RT-PCR report is negative and their CT picture is very classical. They have a clinical presentation of COVID very clearly, and in addition, their inflammatory markers which of COVID are increased, but the RT-PCR is negative. Now, why the RT-PCR is negative is because the RT-PCR sensitivity is about 65 to 70%. What this means is that in about 30% of patients, even if the patient has COVID, the RT-PCR would be negative. And therefore, in this situation, if you do an RT-PCR where there is a very strong suspicion of COVID, and this condition will be called SARI, severe acute respiratory illness, where the clinical picture is of COVID, the RT-PCR is negative. We do a CT scan which shows a very classical picture of COVID. Now, there is very classical pneumonia which occurs with COVID. The ground glass appearance is there, and usually the peripheral part of the lung and the basal part of the lung is involved. So we can see the CT scan. If CT scan is typical of COVID and the patient's RT-PCR is negative, this patient should be treated on the lines of COVID, should be isolated, and should be treated accordingly. And the RT-PCR needs to be repeated after 48 hours. And we have seen patients whose RT-PCR is negative first day, then after 48 hours again negative, after 72 hours it has become positive. So this can occur. This can definitely occur because sensitivity of RT-PCR is only 70%.
Yeah, in this period of scarcity of beds, if a patient, while you're waiting for the patient to be admitted, eligible patient, if he starts deteriorating, in the sense the SpO2 starts dipping, do you suggest some measures which can be taken at home to support such a patient while a bed becomes available for next 6 hours or so?
This is very important. In this situation, Nagpur is facing a tremendous shortage of oxygen beds. We are facing people are not getting oxygen beds, and I get regularly about 20 phone calls every day. I try to adjust them somewhere, but many of the times we are helpless. Government is doing all its efforts. Means corporation is doing all efforts. Beds are being increased. Nearly 85 hospitals have been converted into COVID hospitals. Beds are being increased in existing COVID facilities. And despite all these efforts, there has been the infection is so overwhelming. The pandemic is so severe that so many people still do not get oxygen bed. In this situation, it is very important that patient can take oxygen at home and continue to try to get the bed. There are oxygen concentrators available, costing about 50,000 rupees, or they are available on rent as well, where we can get oxygen, but the delivery of that oxygen is not very high flow. It is about, it will help to tide over with mild hypoxia. So it can deliver up to 6 liters per minute, or 8 liters per minute of oxygen. It can start with 2 liters per oxygen. Many patients who recover from COVID also, these patients can also, after 2 weeks of hospitalization, they continue to need oxygen. They cannot continue to remain occupying a hospital bed. These patients can also be put on home oxygen, either an oxygen concentrator or a cylinder. Oxygen cylinders can be brought and they can be put on oxygen. And oxygen is the main treatment. Oxygen levels should, SpO2 should not remain low in patients. Otherwise, they have adverse outcomes.
Your advice to patients with existing diseases, coexisting diseases, diabetes, asthma, CKD, chronic kidney disease, such things, your advice to them who might contract COVID?
I think this is a very important aspect. What we have seen in the hospital is that patients who die within 24 hours of hospitalization are those patients who have presented with a very low SpO2 because of home isolation. They have not reported on time, or because of lack of bed, they could not come. And these patients whose SpO2 is 40%, 50%, these patients, even if you correct the hypoxia, give oxygen levels, put the patient on ventilator, these patients may usually succumb within 24 hours. But patients who succumb after 24 hours, comorbidity is very important. After 4 or 5 days, patients who have diabetes, patients who have hypertension, who have chronic kidney disease, who have chronic liver disease, who have COPD, chronic obstructive lung disease, who have asthma, all these are and elderly people. All these patients are comorbid. And in these patients, it has been found that mortality is not because of COVID as such, but because their diabetes has become severely uncontrolled. They develop complications of diabetes, or they develop complications of chronic kidney disease, which takes a toll. So had they not had these comorbidities, these patients would have survived. But because of these comorbidities, therefore, these patients form a high-risk group, and these have been easily identified and therefore needs to be given special attention to treatment. Proper, appropriate treatment of comorbidities is absolutely essential.
Yeah. If the House permits, I'll take up the questions from the audience. Hello. If the House permits, I'll take the questions from the audience. At least a few, first few, say 4 or 5. Can we take up?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
No.
Sir, can I ask a question?
No. You have to put it in the chat box, please. No direct question, please.
Okay.
Mute yourself. Thank you.
Till the time, like the questions are like been seen.
Yeah.
I would like to
Just a moment.
Comment.
Yeah. Questions have been seen. Just a moment.
Sir.
Yeah. There was a personal question describing his own illness. I don't think that will feature here. If there are general questions, they can be entertained. Personal questions, I think, should be addressed to the concerned physician with whom somebody is. So there is no specific question. I think I'll pass a concluding remark so that we can sum up the entire thing. The program of this sort. Yeah, please.
Sir, when we started the RBD plasma therapy, plasma testing facility, now out of 10, we are able to select only 2 to 4 people. This also proves the inefficacy of the blind plasma therapy without checking RBD antibody. So it is very important to check the right antibody and right titer for the effective plasma therapy. That is what the concluding.
No, we go by the science that you are trying to tell us, but our point is from international forums and everywhere, we are trying to gather evidence-based support for all this, and we are at the paucity of this aspect.
No.
But
There are clear guidelines. There are clear guidelines from the national and international authorities.
yeah, we'll come to that thing
Evidence-based.
slightly later. I think, yes, on some other forum it can be addressed.
It has been mentioned.
Dr. Varbe Sahab, this can be addressed on some other forum.
Right, sir.
Yeah. Because the programs of this sort, which are oriented towards scientific facts, impose a burden on all of us, you, me, and everyone, especially on all those who are well versed with the intricacies of modern medicine in this particular case. To be able to judge impartially what is good and what is not good for the society at large, a much deeper scientific analysis needs to be done.
Correct.
Convalescent plasma therapy in COVID-19 is still an evolving modality. I appreciate your point. Mostly under investigation, that's the literature, that is what literature says. The views expressed in all this represent the evolving science and the zeal with which you are working. We celebrate all such scientists who work relentlessly with their single-minded intent. Otherwise, science would not progress. So we are indebted to you, in fact.
Correct.
I once again hail the speakers, Dr. Prashant Joshi and Dr. Varbe, for clarifying our doubts and sharing their experience and knowledge, sparing their valuable time. Thank you very much, Dr. Varbe, Dr. Joshi.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting us. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you all the audience for the patient listening.
Over to Mr. Ram. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
I will ask both the doctor to please wait for a while. I will ask President sir to please come in.
Friends, I am very thankful to Dr. Prashant P. Joshi and Dr. Harish Varbe sir for enlightening us with their vast knowledge today and guiding us in our fight against COVID. Now it's time to present them with a memento as a memory for today's session. Sir, even though we are distance apart, we will be giving you soon. Please accept, sir, Dr. Prashant P. Joshi, sir, memento from our end. I may ask everyone to please mute yourself and give a rouse of clap to Prashant P. Joshi, sir, for the same.
Thank you very much.
Now I wish to give a memento to Dr. Harish G. Varbe for his valuable inputs today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I may again ask everyone to. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, shucks, my light.
Now may I ask Honorable Secretary, sir, to please take the proceedings.
Thank you, President sir. A very good afternoon to our distinguished guests and my fellow Rotarians. When we are in the midst of such challenging times, braving COVID-19, a seminar like this assumes a lot of significance. Words are not sufficient to thank our esteemed speakers, Dr. Prashant Joshi, HOD Medicine, AIIMS Nagpur, and Dr. Harish Varbe, Director, Lifeline Blood Bank, Nagpur, for taking out time from their busy schedule and enlightening us. We all know that our doctors, also our saviors, are doing their best to keep us safe. And this address by our COVID warriors to create awareness about vaccination, plasma donation will not only impact all of us, but our family and friends also. I am extremely grateful to our project directors and project coordinators for organizing this informative talk. I would also like to extend my sincere appreciation to the technical team for the smooth streaming of the program. My heartfelt thanks to the audience for their active presence in such large numbers. Lastly, I would reiterate My thanks to all those who directly or indirectly helped in making this program a successful one. Special thanks to our foreign guests from USA. They were the first to log in as soon as at 10 o'clock. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurade sir from Africa.
Oh, welcome. Welcome. Hello.
Chalo. Is it over? Naresh, is it over now?
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Dr. Joshi, Dr. Varbe sir. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your kind words.
Thank you, Dr. Harish Varbe. Thank you, Dr. Prashant. Thank you so much for your time, your information, you enriched us. Thank you.
Great.